Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Mary-Lou Weisman, and I am the ghost of Duchenne past. And I'll be moderating this panel of people who are of Duchenne present. So each of us is going to introduce him or herself briefly, and so I'll start by introducing myself briefly. Probably know I'm a writer. My husband and I are, my husband Larry is here today, and I just want to say a couple of things. I'm here in addition to having been asked. I'm here because of our son Peter, who died 35 years ago at the age of 15 and a half. And it wasn't until maybe about 10 or 15 years ago that we found PPMD and what we had been looking for all along. We hadn't been happy with any of the other alternatives, and when we met Pat, we knew this is where we wanted to put our energy and some funding. And we do this, I think, because it keeps, to remain active in the Duchenne community, and specifically in Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy, it helps us to keep Peter's memory more alive, more vivid, more satisfying, more comforting than it would be if we remained passive and sort of out of the stream of progress. For us, dealing with Duchenne was a very lonely business. There was nothing like this. There was nothing like PPMD. There was no internet. We were alone, utterly alone in this. And there were no medical alternatives worth taking. The only option we had was the heel cord operation, which we turned down after a lot of thought. I don't know to this day whether that was a good decision or not, but because of how grim the landscape was with Duchenne, what we determined to do was to give Peter a life of quality and not think about quantity, because frankly, that wasn't really an option. The disease would run its course uninterrupted and uninterfered with, and we understood that pretty much from the get-go, and we lived that way. And I really think that we did give Peter, it seems odd to say, but I think those 15 and a half years were constituted a whole life. And in fact, I can't think of it any other way, and maybe I can't afford to think of it any other way, but in fact, there is, I feel, an enormous satisfaction in having done my best. But this is another world. I just went downstairs and saw the most incredible things. I was given a glass of water by a robot. I saw a ramp that I would have given both arms for, and so forth. And you should all take a look down there. I mean, for me, this is an education. And so I'm going to conduct this panel as an education for myself, because I have a lot to learn from everybody here. So I will now turn it over to the members of the panel who will introduce themselves. Where shall I start? I'll start. There's 2 here and 3 here.
I'll start.
You start.
Okay. I'm Gretchen Egner. I live in Mukwonago, Wisconsin with my husband Brian, and we have 2 sons. We have an 18-year-old who just graduated from high school, holy cats, And he does not have Duchenne. And then we have a son who's 16 who's here with us, Nick. And we celebrated our 24th wedding anniversary on Monday. And the title of the panel is The Making It Work. And I guess our role, or my role in it really, is just as we've gone through every day. I think our first conference was Cincinnati in 2005. The landscape of the conference has changed every year, and it's almost as if it's growing with our education, our knowledge, and where we are. Because we brought Nick here for this, and all of a sudden there's a transitions thing that happened yesterday. He was able to go to that, and we're looking at things like, you know, transitioning from high school to college and being independent. And we've always tried to be real with our kids and with our family. And you know, Duchenne is a serious thing, but it's not everything. And I think for our own mental health and our kids' health, it's really important that we don't treat it like we have it crazy worse than anybody else. Because frankly, we don't know that we do. And there is so much that we can do with PPMD to educate ourselves, educate our kids, and as Mary-Lou says, give them a hell of a lot of quality with whatever their quantity is.
Steal this one. Hi, I'm Brian Egner, Gretchen Egner's husband, Nick Egner's father. Nick is 16, typical rambunctious 16-year-old, doing all kinds of obnoxious things all the time. But we have a lot of fun together. And like even today, he's marking on my hands with his pen and stuff like that, just trying to get attention, I think. So, but I think when we were initially given the diagnosis, it was pretty rough, and we just kind of dealt with it for a while and just pulled together and tried to keep things as normal as we can. And really, you never know what life's going to hand you, but just make the most of it, and always try to keep happy and do fun things with your kids and stuff like that. That's really what life's all about. There you go.
Hi, I'm Jill Castle. I have two boys. I have Anthony Castle, who's 15, and he has Duchenne, and Oliver Castle, who is 13 and does not have Duchenne, and they're here. So that's, I got to not look at them while I talk. I think I was asked, I've been here since the beginning as well. We started coming to conferences when Anthony was 3 and diagnosed. I had the luxury of knowing that early about Parent Project. So I think it's changed the entire landscape of his life, definitely ours. I think I've been asked to be on this panel because I am a single mom of my 2 boys. However, my ex-husband and I are still very, very close, and one of my best friends is his fiancée, and we've actually taken our situation and decided to be flexible because we believe that's what this disorder calls for. And we've created a very, very strong, very loving, very supportive family. So I think I'm here to show a different option in case we're struggling, because we know the divorce rate, I remember being told it was 89% in our community. So it is challenging enough. I think on the call I said, somebody asked if I thought marriages ended because of Duchenne. And I don't think that that's the true in our case by any means. I think what happens is that Duchenne is like throwing Miracle-Gro on your character defects. So everything that was already wrong kind of just gets amped up a little bit, like it was on steroids too. So that's what happened to us. So I can't blame Duchenne. It just created a little bit more stress that we had to navigate. And so in our family, we acknowledge it. We don't pretend like it's perfect all the time. We acknowledge all the painful stuff, but then we don't swim in it. We decide to live in the solution, and we talk about what we're going to do to move forward together. So,
thank you. Okay,
Hello,
Ben.
I'm Benjamin Dupree. I'm 22 years old. I have Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and I just graduated this May from Southern Methodist University in Dallas with a degree in biochemistry. Kind of, that really goes to show, I guess, just that I have my own dream of becoming a genetic counselor, and finishing this degree has shown me that I'm one step closer to accomplishing that goal, and that I can really think years down the road about what I can achieve in the future. I guess that's...
That'll work for now, because we've got lots to talk to you about.
Okay. I'm Rachel Poysky, married to James Poysky. We have our son Joel with Duchenne, who is 12, almost 13. I'm very scared for September to come, birthday month. And we also have Hallie, who is age 8. And I serve as a Presbyterian pastor and kind of bring that perspective to this panel. I work primarily with children, and you'd think I'd get enough children, but I come here and lead kids track. So apparently I just love hanging out with kids, which is true. You know, I've found 3 things that have really helped me on this Duchenne journey: hope, humor, and truth. I think hope is so powerful, and it can get you through the darkest days, and that's something that's been so meaningful for me. I think humor has been extremely helpful. Even sometimes the things my husband and I laugh at, we think if anyone outside of these walls heard this, they would think we were crazy. But to laugh at a lot of things, and just truth, as some of them mentioned. We try to live with the truth of where we are in our family and to not keep things hidden. I think I see that a lot even in my ministry when things aren't communicated and when the truth, just people, you're not speaking the reality of your lives. Sometimes it festers and it makes the journey harder even when we think it's going to be easier. So, and you know, one thing that I've been thankful with the Duchenne journey is flexibility. I've realized you don't have to fall into any parenting mode anymore. You can just blame Duchenne. And you can say, yeah, we're going to have cookies for breakfast. It's cool. It's Duchenne. You can use it for about any parenting mistake, right? It covers any parenting mistake, and no one can really come back at you and be judgy because they can't say anything. So I think I'm already wanted to be a flexible mom with flexible rules, and now Duchenne just gives me permission for that. So I'm happy about that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Rachel. Ben, I just have to pick on you because when we had a quick conversation, we had a quick conference call last week, and I think, you know, Ben is a particularly valuable member of this panel for obvious reasons, and also has a lot to say. And I know that one of the problems that Ben has had to deal with in his life is how open or not open a role Duchenne and knowledge about Duchenne played in his life. So I'm going to turn to him and to start the conversation about information and sharing of information among the boys with Duchenne, their parents, their siblings, their friends, whatever.
I guess the first part of that really started when I was had just been diagnosed. Kind of the way information sharing was handled was that my mom basically was like, whatever he ends up finding, whatever information he finds, like, don't try to hide the diagnosis from your son, and in my case, from me. If they find the information and ask about it, just try to explain it in a calm way without being upset, without, like, just the way you would, I guess, any other thing that your child finds out about. Mm-hmm. But something I've struggled with for a while was not admitting how I felt about Duchenne. for a very long time, I would say I was in, I guess, denial. I thought I was happy, doing fine. I had friends. I wasn't bullied. Everything seemed great, but I was never acknowledging, yes, I do have Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Like, one example is I never wanted to come to these conferences. I was always afraid of knowing, afraid of finding out what might happen to me, kind of trying to hide behind friends and fun and never really admitting, yes, I have Duchenne. And kind of as I've grown over the last 4 years in college, I've come more to admit more about how I feel, and by sharing that information and kind of thinking through how Duchenne affects me, I was really able to kind of grow as a person and kind of get in touch with who I was and really grow to where I can sit up here and speak in front of all of y'all when, like 5 years ago, I was terrified of coming to these conferences.
I remember when we talked on the phone, you said something about feeling very lonely with the information that you had, and becoming anxious about just feeling anxious without quite knowing how to deal with that anxiety. There's something that, and can you say a little bit more about the loneliness, and anybody else who wants to add to that? Well, we'll talk about information, I think.
With kind of being in denial and not talking about Duchenne, not talking about how I felt about it, I really never developed an ability to talk about it. I'd never understood how I could bring up something that bothered me, or how I could ask for anything more of my parents, who are already putting in so much effort to, like, protect me, raise me. Like, when I have a condition like this, like, because it's a lot of work, and I always felt that I couldn't overburden my parents.
You mean by talking about how you felt?
Yeah.
Did they talk about how they felt? Were they forthcoming themselves?
I don't think it was they were as forthcoming as I think I would have liked. It's hard to say that but I really feel like if we'd talked about it more, if I'd understood how my parents really felt about about me having Duchenne, that I could have been in a better place.
A better place sooner then, perhaps. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Does anyone else have... I mean, I am completely out of it when it comes to sharing information. I have very little to add and a lot to learn. Too late.
Well, Nick's here, so I think he'll call us on the carpet if we're lying or wrong. But I think we've tried to do a really good job of being open and honest with him. Maybe frank to a fault. He may have been, too young at sometimes to hear some things, because maybe I was too honest. And I hope that he is always sharing with us the concerns that he has. I feel like he does. He may wait until like later in the evening or, and bring up something. But I think that open communication, especially now, he's in a wheelchair full time. And so he relies on us for physical care. He gets nervous that I'm going to drop him sometimes. And I get a little nervous, I'm going to drop him sometimes. And so I think when he's not happy, he lets us know. And I would hope that he shares his fears with us. I remember the first conference we went to in Cincinnati. There were parents who kept their kids out of the doctors, the meetings with doctors after the physicals. And I just couldn't understand how you would not tell your kids what's going on. And so I would try to, massage the language and be thoughtful. But, I said in the conference call, I can be frank and I can stick my foot in my mouth sometimes. And I think that I err on the side of giving too much information instead of too little and letting them process. but hope that we have a safe relationship and then he's comfortable and knows that he can come to us with anything and we'll deal with it together.
Can you share with us a particular instance of a question or of your son seeking information from you, or you offering information to him that you thought he needed? And Brian, you're in on this too. I think it helps to be a little bit specific.
I think in talking about college and school, and he asks how things would work, as Alex, our older son, is navigating through going away to school, and we're kind of trying to push him out the door. And we bring up with Nick going to college and going away to college, and he asks, well, kind of how would that work? And I liked the discussion today with PCAs, and we haven't done that yet. Like I said, we're primary caregiver. Nick's still in school full time, so that during the daycare when I'm at work is pretty well taken care of. And then our older son has been able to help in a pinch. So I think we have started those conversations about college because just like Alex isn't living in my basement when he's 30, Nick's not going to be in playing video games all day long when he's 30 either. Yeah, that got him off the Tetris. All right. Yeah.
But so much is inescapable because of the internet and Facebook and all of that, and everybody might have something to say about what's good about that, what's bad about that.
I wanted to comment that in our house, I let them lead. Sometimes I think my kids have too much information as well, but I let them lead, and I didn't answer. When they asked a question, I answered that question. I didn't go necessarily beyond the question, but I answered where they were at. And I've noticed that by starting to do that at a young age, their questions get more sophisticated every year, and then my answers get more sophisticated. So that's been really good. And then as far as I go, I think they take a lot of their lead from how I'm handling it too. So I'm a firm believer they've got to see me have a bad day. If they don't see me fall down, then they don't have any model of how to get back up the next day. So I kind of let them see that, and I'll say, I'm having a bad day. Today's just a bad day, but we've talked about it. Tomorrow's going to be a fresh day, so it's going to be different. I don't want to hide too much because then they won't learn those tools of how to rebound and bounce back if they don't see me be able to do it. So
that's interesting. Do you have any specific examples of situations that you found difficult to deal with, or the kinds of questions that were asked at different times?
Anthony's got a movie out, and it's premiering tomorrow night. And part of the movie, we went over the timeline in the movie on Duchenne, and the way that they interviewed me, I was actually talking about the timeline we were presented with when he was 3. We were told at this age he'd stop walking, at this age, blah, blah, blah. And I go through that timeline, and that's not the timeline anymore. Anthony's done clinical trials, we've added all kinds of therapies, but the way the movie's cut, it cuts me to where it looks like I'm saying that that's what the timeline is. So when we went to the premiere on the West Coast, we had to explain to Anthony what was going to be in the movie, and we had to talk about it, and so that's when a lot of questions came up about, well, what does that mean? What does that timeline mean? And I had to explain that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be your life. You've already done things so differently. You stayed up longer. We've got more interventions. And then we have to have the discussion that, nobody knows where their life is going and what it's going to look like. So for me to go tell my kid what his life's going to look like at 3 for the rest of his life is really kind of silly. So, because none of us really know. Things change all the time for everybody. So we've had a lot of those conversations, and that was, could have been very tricky, and I definitely had to take a few deep breaths, and there's been lots of questions. And now we know that we're able to talk about those things too.
Thank you. That's terrific. Brian, did you have anything that you wanted to add? You looked like you did.
Sure. Hard to steal the microphone away from my wife, though. So, Just real briefly. And Nick, he asks some interesting questions and makes some crazy comments at times, but I think just like Jill said, nobody really knows what can happen in life. People, there are only projections on life expectancy for everyone. And it's just important to keep it all in perspective and try to get the most out of every single day.
Thanks, Brian. Any thoughts from you? I think that you might have a unique perspective.
Well, I think one thing I would say too is, when you get the diagnosis, it quickly becomes your journey. And I've tried really hard to daily remind myself it's actually my son's journey more than it's mine. And that's hard because you can kind of get into your stuff. And I think when you get the diagnosis, you go into caregiving mode and you forget a little bit about the parenting mode. And we are still raising up young men. And there's certain things that we want them to do, and we want them to advocate for themselves. And so even though we're parenting maybe differently, we still have to keep in mind that there's things that they need to grow up and mature and be able to do, like Ben. They need to advocate for themselves. They need to be able to go into the doctor's office and understand their disease. They need to make medical decisions. So I've tried really hard in all this to remind myself, as much as I get caught in my stuff about it, that really I still have an end game of parenting Joel in a way that he becomes a young man that is responsible, that's compassionate, that's kind, that takes responsibility in his community, that all those things still are part of my parenting role. And I was also just going to, what Jill said, it hit home with me about sharing the bad days. One time we were at the airport, and Joel uses a medical stroller, and when the TSA agent asked his age, and he said 11 at that time, and the TSA agent said, "You're too big to be in a wheelchair, in a stroller." I'm sure a lot of you have had those. And so we got past there, and Joel said, "She's a blah, 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 and aren't you mad?" And, and I thought, I'm not going to take that away from him. I said, "Yes, I'm mad." I said, "Let's think of 5 names we can call her right now." And I said, "You know what?" I said, I would go back and correct her and give her a piece of my mind, but she's responsible for us getting on the plane, so I can't do that. But we were in it together, and I wasn't just trying to calm him down and pacify him, but I was saying, "You're right. This is so not fair that she had no right to do this." And it even got worse when I did explain what he had, and then she said, "As you know, oh yes, my cousin has MS." So anyway, but I think to be in it with them, and sometimes you have to help them work through it, but it's okay to be mad with them, because then they understand that it's okay to be mad, because sometimes it just is.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful. I have to insert a story here from my experience, because one day Peter was out on his own in his electric wheelchair, and we were in this little town on the Cape, and he told, actually I was with him, and this woman came up to us, and she said, "May I say a blessing over you?" And I just thought, oh man, this is really going to be a bad scene. And Peter said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So, she raises her arm, she does a whole sort of spooky thing, and when she's all done, she does the worst thing she could possibly do. She says, "Now get up and walk." And I thought I would die on the spot. And Peter said, this was Peter. He said, "I'm a little tired right now, but I'll try it when I get home." And I just thought, what a kid. I admired him so for that. And I understood how much he understood. I had faith in him, to handle himself that way. And he had such compassion from other people. He understood the whole thing so much better than I did. He wasn't angry. he was pleased with himself, you know, and as we walked home, I'm like speechless, and he says, that was really weird, wasn't it? And I'm like, yeah, thank you, Pete. So, yeah, there are moments like that, and it's always, I guess, what Rachel has said in terms of her kid being able to manage his own emotions and be in charge of himself and be in charge of the information that pertains to him is to help them grow up and to give them confidence in themselves. And I just think that's a terrific insight to, you know, to make him responsible for himself. How do you feel about that? Have you ever had any bad moments like that, or did you have the information you needed when you needed it?
I think as far as like understanding that I had Duchenne and what information I needed to know about it, I felt all of that was really there when I needed it. I guess I didn't have like as much of this new social media stuff that everyone has these days, but I was still able to get all the information I needed, I think.
Good. I think another, we have someone here on the panel who's kind of an expert on issues around siblings, which I think would be significant. I'm sort of avoiding some of the subjects that we all know all too well: fatigue, anger, sorrow. I don't think we need to talk about that. I think that you know, that I felt the same pain that, you know, parents of today feel, and I don't think that merits a lot of conversation, except to say that sometimes my husband and I were just on different pages, and I needed help and was angry because I wanted more help and all that stuff. But that's the stuff that you get through, and I think it's what Jill gets through with her husband, with her ex-husband, and but Jill has a lot of experience with siblings, and I think she could be interesting for all of us on that subject. So go ahead.
Well, when Anthony was diagnosed at 3, for the first couple of years, I had lots of help figuring out how to parent and raise him. You know, there were lots of resources that I was finding, and our life was really focused around him. But I had this, you know, a 1-year-old. I had a son 2 years younger than him that I had no idea how to parent him. Nobody said, and I knew it wasn't going to be typical. I knew it wasn't going to be typical because our family wasn't typical anymore. So at that time, I have a master's in educational psychology, so I was taking a lot of courses in behavior and things like that anyway, and leading groups. So I went and I took a course really for my own curiosity from a man up in Seattle. His name's Don Meyer, and he does a lot of research and studies in siblings of kids with special needs. And so I went and I got certified in SIB shop. So I'll be running the SIB shop on Saturday, and I've run it here for quite a few years, and it just helped teach me, you know, they did a lot of studies and they showed that the siblings, you know, they think about their brothers a lot, they have a lot of questions, sometimes, you know, they get a little bit resentful that they have to have their entire world around their brother or hang around their brother, you know, just because he has difficulty making friends or whatever the situation is. But then on the other side of it, they also want to be at the doctor's appointments, and they want to know the information, and they want to be included. I know my son Oliver's told me that. You know, he wants to be part of it. So it was very fascinating to me, and I learned a lot, and I read a lot of studies, and so I started leading groups on it. And it really helped me when we got into the preteen years where they started, the emotions started to show of our life, especially that's when I went through my divorce. So that was a difficult time for all of us. So I was really lucky that I had that additional information for his brother as well. And so it's changed how I do things. You know, I do let them have very separate lives. They do have separate friends. we've had caregivers since I can remember, and they've always been young men, because now Anthony wants to go to the mall and look at girls, so he needs a good a young man to go with him rather than a woman who's taking care of him. So we've always set it up so that they could have their own lives and things like that. So I've always tried to pay attention to both of them as individuals, because I don't think it's all about just the child who has Duchenne.
And when you do the work that you do with the siblings, can you give us some idea of the kind of how you do that and what you do with them?
I do, well, the way I was taught is I do in context play and games, depending on the age. When they're really little, we play, and when they're older, or, we do games and things like that, where they just have an opportunity to share and discuss commonalities and differences. And it's just fun. It's fun, the stuff that comes out. I did one where it was a mixed group of disabilities, but one of the kids had a brother with Down syndrome, and he was like, "You know what? I'm tired of my parents think my brother can't do anything, and they don't even think he can unload the dishwasher, but I know he can, because when my parents leave me alone with him, I make them do all of that." And so by hearing those things, it helped me realize, how funny and how somewhat normal, all of it is. And so we do a lot of games, and we try to make it really fun. It's so they don't actually think they're in, therapeutic situation.
Great. That sounds interesting. Do you have any experiences with that?
Not official SIB shops, but I know that I think, again, open communication is really big in our family. And so Alex is 2 years older, and he's always struggled a little bit, I think, with Nick getting more of the attention, but he's able to gripe and complain about it in a way that, you know that he understands. And we just built a house this past year, and Nick couldn't take the bus because we were in an apartment, and then we were in the house process. And Alex drove Nick to school every day. And, so he did the whole tying him down in the van, getting him to school, getting him undone. He finished early because of graduating. He got done early and still, got up during when Nick had final exams and took him. And it wasn't something that he complained about. And, because they fight and argue, all the time around us. And so I'll ask Nick, does you guys get along okay? And it sounds like, yeah, they do, and he takes care of them, and it's great, but it's not something we're going to talk about, that we get along real well and that we're nice, because it wouldn't go with the reputation of, they're brothers, so they don't get along.
So it's okay to express, for your children to express their frustration with each other, or...
Yeah, I think so. And Rachel mentioned humor, and we have kind of an unorthodox sense of humor. So I think that there are would be people who might be offended by some of the things that come out of our children's mouths and our own to our children. And I think that Alex is able to complain to Nick about his Duchenne, and the phrase yes, because you're in a wheelchair, or when Nick complains well, I'm in a wheelchair. And so sometimes, about silly things, I can't do this because I'm in a wheelchair, but it's not something that he can't do. He's just whining and complaining like any teenage boy would do. So, yeah.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that we see with our two boys, I think they're kind of putting on a show in front of us. They like to argue, they like to just cause chaos and things like that. But once in a while, I can be in a nearby room or something, and they'll be in a room talking to each other, and I'll eavesdrop a little bit, and it's a normal conversation. I'm thinking to myself, why can't you do this when we're sitting eating dinner together? They just won't do it. But when they're together, they're just fine. It's just part of a natural process, I think, and being 16 and 18, they're evolving as young men.
So let's hear it for the normal life, huh? Yeah, I just want to add one thing here that came to mind when you're talking about brothers. And our son Adam, who is 19 months older than Peter, and so has had the experience that all of you have had with sons and siblings, he is a very bright, very talented, very well-educated young man, and he lives in Tucson, Arizona, where he's a lawyer, and he has taken a job in a law firm that is not a hotshot law firm in Tucson, which he might have chosen to do. He's taken a job in a firm that's far more relaxed and that allows him to spend an enormous amount of time each day with his children. And just the other day, I was emailing with him, and I told him what I was going to be doing, and he said to me, he said, well, you know, I'm not making that much money, but that's okay because I'm doing exactly what I want to do. And I said, what's that? And he said, you know, spending lots and lots of time with my 3 children. And I said, is that Peter's legacy? And he said, of course. So here we were with our values of college and graduate schools and making great livings and all that stuff, and he's tossed it off in favor of the pleasure of being with his children. And I do think that is Peter's legacy, and it's a very positive one. So I'm pleased about that, and I think they were great together. I remember one night, Adam wanted to be alone with his friends, and Peter didn't want that. Peter wanted to be with his brother. So he wheeled his chair up in front of Adam's door, which was stoutly closed, and he said, Adam, this is Dad. Open the door. Didn't work, of course, but, you know, at least there was a lot of humor and play between the two of them, and I'm glad, even though I didn't know what our panelists know, I'm really glad that I can reflect from what they say and think it was a happy home. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have any information. But still, it was a good life, and makes me feel good to hear everybody talk about it. What about your sibling experiences? Do you have anything to share with people about the good and the bad and the ugly?
Mostly just that I wish I had shared more with my sibling about how I felt, and that I paid more attention to our relationship. I was too distracted, I guess, with my own thoughts and feelings and my own problems that I never really paid enough attention to my sibling.
What's the age difference between you? And is your sibling male or female?
Christy is 3 years younger than me.
Okay.
And I really feel like I should have done more to develop a stronger relationship with my sister. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, but I can move forward and really take an opportunity to do that.
Is that something you're looking forward to doing? Or does it feel too late?
It might be too late, I don't know, but I really feel like it's something I need to do. Uh-huh. It's something I should do, something I can do.
Yeah. And how was she with you? Did she pay attention to you? Did she help you out?
We didn't really pay much attention to each other at all.
Huh.
It's strange, I guess, but it's not something I can change, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
That's the way it was.
And what's your experience, Rachel, with the sibling issue?
You know, I think something I've learned is it's okay every once in a while to sacrifice something for your Duchenne child for the sibling. I think there was one experience where my son, who has a lot of learning issues, and we were trying to get him into this private school for learning issues, and he had kind of this interview. And I realized I'd promised my daughter I would be at something at that exact same time. And I promised, and I bailed on it once, and I knew I absolutely could not bail on it again. And so I had to just send my dad off with my son to do this interview. And that was really important because school was driving us crazy that we had to go somewhere else. But I'd promised her I would be at her event. And it was hard, but I knew it was the right decision. And I think that's what we have to do sometimes. And it's okay for our Duchenne children to learn that sometimes they have to wait while the siblings. And something I try to do, because Joel and I fly all over the country for treatments, and I'm sure a lot of you do, and clinical trials and all that. So my daughter and I I surprise her once a year with a trip. And I mean, it could just be 2 hours away to a hotel, but we just take a girls' trip, and so that she can feel like she's getting to go away and do something. And I think it's so important to invest in the siblings and find out with them what's going on, because they have a journey too in all of it. And there's lessons that our Duchenne boys can learn by us doing that with the siblings. So it's always so easy to take them for granted. I think Duchenne siblings are some of the best people in the world. I just love them and their heart. And sometimes a lot of them have a personality where they can just kind of meld into the woodwork or be taken for granted. And it's so important that we make some sacrifices for them and for our marriages too. That's the other one. So, yeah.
I think that's a great idea, the idea of doing something very special, because there are times that you're just overwhelmed with what you need to do for your son, and there really isn't much you can do unless you really are very conscious and structure it in such a way that it happens, because it's very easy for it not to happen. I don't know that have we used up all our time? So, and then some? And a little then some? Okay, so it's your turn. We so welcome. Any thoughts? Additions, questions? This gentleman there, yeah.
Hi, my name's Dustin. I have a question for Ben. My son Ethan's still very young, and I'm very curious to know what you appreciated most in navigating.
Hi. I'm curious to know what you appreciated most in navigating school, middle school, high school, in terms of the people around you, the support. But I'm also curious to know what's your wish list, what you wish you would have had in navigating that.
Mm-hmm. I guess the biggest thing that I wish I would have had more of in middle school and high school was, I guess, the ability to advocate for myself. I was very unsure of what I wanted. I didn't really speak much for myself. I let my parents do everything. Like, I let mostly my mom just figure everything out. I didn't really want to have to think about it. But I feel like if I'd been more open with what I want, I could have had a better experience in middle school and high school. Sorry, what was the other part of your question?
The other part of my question was, like, what did you really appreciate having in terms of navigating and working your way through?
I guess friends who really treated me like anyone else. It wasn't about Duchenne, it wasn't about the wheelchair. If my friends would make things work if they needed to. If one of my friends lived in a third-story apartment, they would be fine with carrying me up the stairs. It wouldn't come as a question. It'd just be something they did.
Well, that's great. That's nice that you had that relationship. Anybody else have something to share or something to ask of our panelists? I can't see all of that.
No takers. Well, first of all, Mary-Lou and team, thank you so very much. We're going to a 10-minute break, and then we're going to come back, and John Porter's going to start. Is this on?
I can't hear you.
Okay, good. So, Mary-Lou, I just wanted to say thank you all. They're going to be around, so if you have specific questions that you would like to handle on a one-to-one, they will float around and be happy to answer them for you. In the meantime, you can take a 10-minute break and then come back, and we'll start into John Porter's session about where's the research going.
Okay, thanks.